Chris's Comics Corner.
So, Chris, what classic comic book are you going to be looking at today?
Thanks, Professor. Today I'm looking at Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 1, number 118 from March 1973, with a 20-cent cover price. Script done by Stan Lee and Gerry Conway. Art done by John Romita Sr., Jim Mooney, and Tony Motellaro. Lettering done by Sam Rosen and Duffy. Coloring done by Stan G. Edited by Roy Thomas. Our story, Countdown to Chaos. Man, oh man, in this one, Joe Robertson is attacked by a giant glowing man. Holy cow, what could this be? It is this giant creature that was originally known as the Man Monster, but here he's going by a different name. And he's under the powers of the Disruptor. Now, the Smasher comes in and he's striking with respect to this. And Spider-Man arrives just in time to save the day, to distract the monster from Robbie and saying, hey, pal, attack me instead. Spider-Man's wondering, why is this guy doing this? And what's going on here? He manages to succeed, and he also puts on a spider tracker on the giant man. I got to say, it was a real Davey versus Goliath battle here. And I got to say, this guy really looks intimidating. And why is he glowing? Who knows? Spider-Man distracts the creature, leads it away, and then says, oh, wait, you know what? I'm going to find out what's going on a little bit later, because right now he's got to join Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and his pal and roommate Harry to do some campaigning for a local politician by the name of Richard Raleigh. Hey, Raleigh seems like a good stand-up guy. He wants criminals out of the office, and he's the new guy. He's got decent good looks. He's the guy that everybody wants. He's the people's candidate. He's going to take out the old incumbent. Sounds like a good plan. Well, our guys pile into the van. Mary Jane puts on some headphones, grabs the mic, does some broadcasting. Fight crime to keep criminals out of the office. Vote for a clean city. Vote for Richard Riley. And this is all good, but Harry's a little wondering, hey, Peter, you missed all the action because right after Raleigh's speech yesterday, this costume dude showed up, and it was this giant guy. I can't believe, he wanted to disrupt the campaign. What's up with that? Well, no sooner does he say that, then boom, he's up again. There's the Smasher. Holy cow. And what is he doing? He's smashing everything up in sight and down again. And he's doing this under the orders of the Disruptor. He doesn't want Riley to get elected. He's just berserk. And then Spider-Man sees that he's berserk. So he blocks the path of the van and he starts smashing the grill, starts smashing the hood. All of our gang piles out of the van, and they just get out in time to see this wreckage. Be wondering, say, man, we're glad we got out of here. Peter has a shocked look on his face, ducks into an alley where nobody's watching him, changes into Spider-Man, uses his tracker, goes after that to the headquarters, where the Smasher leads him to the masked baddie known as the Disruptor. Well, all along, again, we get this battle of the Disruptor. Now, he's this masked guy, and he's holding a remote control, and he's basically controlling the Smasher, controlling his brain, and he says, hey, I'll shut off the power and I'll turn off this juice, but you got to take Spider-Man and take him down by this. Now, all of a sudden, hey, the battle's going on, but we also have another battle. It's the Battle of the Poles, and the artwork shifts to these little panels where we get this nice little bit of words done by like a little bit of a light break effect. Think of a scroll done in Times Square where you see a little news bulletin where you get this little crawl. So interspersed with the panels, we get a news crawl saying, hey, Riley's ahead in the polls. It's time for reform. The conservatives, they're uneasy. Meanwhile, the battle's still taking place. And then Spider-Man thinks, there's got to be a way to take out this guy, but how? And all the while, the Smasher takes out a wall, takes out the doctor who's controlling him, and then boom, he takes out another wall, and then boom, everything goes down and the bricks and rubble goes on the Disruptor. Holy cow, what's happening here? Spider-Man thinks, okay, now if he's being controlled and he's getting impulses to his brain, this thing that's implanted in him, he's got to be by his head. So he starts thwacking at his neck, and he basically takes out the creature. Seems like he's dead. How about that? The Smasher lays down and he's fallen. Now, Spider-Man is going to go find the body of the Disruptor. And who is this guy? Why was he doing all of this? He unmasks him and he finds out it was Raleigh all along. Why did he do this? Well, he was basically creating the crime that he was going to take out himself. Interesting little spin. Then J. Jonah Jameson appears on the scene and he sees it on his fallen body. And he says, even in death, his honesty, his fearlessness shine like a beacon. His life will be an inspiration to us all. Aha. That's it. So we had to have a hero. So Spider-Man basically figures, I'm not going to tell anybody that Disruptor was really Richard Raleigh, the guy that was running for office, because, everyone kind of needed a hero and they needed their myths. And we kind of need our martyrs. Something twisted inside Raleigh made him whatever he was, but he was still a symbol. And isn't that what really all counts in the end? Why did I pick this book? Well, I chose this because of all the issues of Amazing Spider-Man and out of all the Marvel comics, this was the very, very first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man and the very first Marvel comic I ever read. I was really, really blown away with respect to the artwork. And particularly the colors. Now, when the Smasher breaks in to see Robbie Robertson, he's smoking a pipe, and the pipe is hot. We actually see the char red coming out of the pipe along with the smoke. The colors were really, really bombastic. Romita's artwork was really, really well drawn and effective. And I talked about Steve Ditko and the fluidity, but there is nothing with respect to this with Romita and all of the fight scenes and the scenes where he's swinging here. The facial expressions that we have on Peter and all of our cast of characters are really, really a sight to behold. And I thought it was so unique of an artwork that even I as a child could follow along with seeing like the tiny little news crawl done in the really effectiveness of seeing something that was on a Times Square type of setting. And of all the villains, you made him a politician. This blew my mind as a little kid. And I wondered if, looking back, were they trying to kind of tie this into the events that were happening back then with Richard Nixon and Watergate? This was stuff that was way, way, way above my head as a little kid. But nonetheless, I got a feeling that, this comic book was onto something, and it gave me more meat on the bone because I only had a yardstick of watching the old 67 Spider-Man cartoons to compare and contrast. You had a villain, and you had Spider-Man take out the villain. There was much, much more meat on the bone with respect to the comic book, and I really, really appreciated that, and it really blew my mind as a kid with the effectiveness of the storytelling. Spider-Man also had a supporting cast that you really didn't see too much of in the cartoon beyond Aunt May, Betty Brant, and J. Jonah Jameson. He's got Harry. He gives Gwen a huge kiss. What's this? You never saw Peter Parker kiss anybody in the comics. I mean, in the cartoon. Now here in the comics, you got a viable love interest. Unbelievable. And Spider-Man typically put on his costume in private in the cartoon, but here he's broadly doing it in an alley just within a few feet of people. I was blown away by this. There was just so many nuances with respect to the comic book that made me fall in love with the medium, and it made me really want to go back and investigate all of these things. I would find out later, too, I picked this up with this being a conclusion. Another thing that blew me away was comic books can be told in multi-parts. I thought, you pick up one comic book, there's going to be a self-contained story in it. The whole nuance and the whole concept of like a multi-parted story, and for me picking this up, just blew me away. So this was a third part of a conclusion of a story that ran in the previous two issues, and I got the conclusion. I would later come to learn, though, that this story was essentially a reprint and it was redrawn from a magazine called The Spectacular Spider-Man that came out way before that in 1968. Some of the things were just basically redrawn or reprinted. Richard Riley still was there, but the Smasher was essentially called the Man-Monster in the first issue. Still drawn by John Romita, but there was a little bit more difference with the embellishment with respect to the covering. The Spectacular Spider-Man magazine would later go on to be reprinted, and I would catch it up both in original and reprinted form. But this just blew me away as a kid. So my choice for today, Amazing Spider-Man number 118.
Awesome. That sounds great. So this was Chris's Comics Corner.
Chris's Comics Corner.